Good morning from New York. Today, we're going to discuss mysticism, health, and politics. First of all, what is mysticism? Well, if you're going to get an understanding of mysticism, it can't be It's not a definition. How would you define it? Well, mysticism is about introspection. It's about communication within your own world that you imagine it to be. And, well, of course, it's about the experiences that you have along the way. Is it religious? I would say it tends not to be in terms of the punishing aspects of religion. There's not a mysticism. Deep introspection needs to be informed, and otherwise it's not very well empowered. It has to be everything in terms of the philosophy of mysticism is involved with the love flow. What you have needs and the meeting of needs, which is life. It has to be about that, because that's what we're about. And mysticism is about, intelligent life forms that can introspect. So, the philosophy is not going to include a punishing attitude, and I've gone into that before. There's a process of healing that takes place, healing from damaged faith and love, which I say is spiritual healing. This, because it connects you also to your virtues. A healthy person is a more virtuous person, mentally. So, if you're talking about health, well, you're talking about the love flow. You're getting your needs met, whatever they are. So you're talking about a definition for mysticism. It needs to be rational, and it needs to be informed. I would say people who study the brain and neurologists are valuable assets to anyone who wants to take a journey within. Psychiatry as well, would be an information you would find valuable. So, that is a more informed mysticism and a better mysticism. And, the question of the self, and free will, and so many other things. Even arriving at important questions like these, it's best to be informed. So if you cut out science, you cut out real mysticism, in my opinion. You're just making stuff up. So nobody needs that. That's why I say those who are mystics are spiritual but not religious. And let's go into that. Religion always has this little bar that talks about love, that it talks about punishment. And, that comes from our, species, we fight or flight, and, So, if there's a bad person, they're attacking us, then we have to defend ourselves. The punishment comes out of that, and it's counterproductive. It doesn't really help. And if you really study the brain, you have to question who and what are you punishing. And the mystic looks into that question. Who or what is having this life? Right? Now, a mystic is not God. Let me put this in a better way, because many concepts of a God are irrational. The absolute truth, to me, that's God. That's everything joined together, understanding it, which we may never get to that absolute point. But knowing that it's there and respecting it is great, and personifying it can be useful. What is the more rational, introspective person you can be? What is the person who is more virtuous in terms of skilled ways to meet our own and other people's needs? And that revolves, your social self revolves around empathy. And that's learned. And that's part of the path of the mystic. You have to have creative, objective, and compassionate empathy. And these things are things that meet needs, social needs. So back to, it has to be about life, it has to be about, if it's about life, it has to be about love. And love is about needs and they're being met. Just at the core of it. And you say, oh, it's more than that. Yeah, perhaps. If you want to delve into how you experience it, and then you have sounds like love hurts. So in that case, you're perhaps being very insightful in a way, but the empathies have their attempts to care and understand with the added force of the objectivity and the compassion and the creativity. And those things, when you're dealing with old hurts that are buried deep inside you, that can hurt. That can make you uncomfortable. You want to know how healthy someone is mentally, then how creative are they? How rational? How compassionate? And that has a lot to do with your mental health. But I say that, and of course, right away someone's going to talk about but only because it affects those things, that love flow. And, let's see, politics. Well, that comes from the philosophy of the mystic. Mystic philosophy speaks to politics. You want to vote, within democracy is obviously the more empathetic way to go. And that is the way of the mystic. And so democracy is it, at the core. And how do we develop that? Of course, people say, democracy can be the tyranny of the majority over the minority. That's not empathetic. So let's call it empathetic democracy. Without empathy, democracy can't work. It doesn't work without that. It works best with those three forms of empathy. Those three forms of empathy, in terms of politics, means that you support certain perspectives. You want to vote for somebody, you want them to be empathetic, and you want them to have some degree of creativity and some degree of rationality and compassion. And these things have to be in balance, and they have to manifest in a greater, stronger trust or faith in a person. And if you're going to vote for somebody, they should have faith in humanity. They should have faith in the potential of human beings. And that will be fed by these three forms of empathy. Politically, the voices in a democracy are four. There's business, which is like the kid in you, the dramatic, experiential process, that part of you that is closest to survival, that's in social circumstances becomes business, trade. That's where survival most is impacting. So that dramatic kid self in you is like business in society. And just as the kid in you is informed by compassionate, creative, and objective empathy, so business needs to be informed and have a connection with government, which relies a lot on objectivity as a major focus, and church, or extended family organizations of various kinds. And this needs to be influenced there. So your trade needs to be influenced. It needs to be creative. So trade needs to be creative, objective, compassionate. And that means a relationship between business, an effective relationship between business and the media, which gives you all kinds of perspectives and is helpful with creativity, and government, whose focus is objectivity and reasoning things out. And extended family organizations, churches, temples, local pub sometime. But those things, they need to be family oriented. So the institution called church is kind of defined, I believe, rationally as extended family. You may see the pub as an extended family. Maybe for you, in some ways it is. But where you gather together, are there just people your age? That's not quite the institution that I'm talking about. When I'm talking about church. Because you need intergenerational communication and support to be an extended family. How does that relate to compassion? Well, passion is about support. And caring. So, punishment is not the way of mystic. And you'll see those who speak as a mystic voice, wherever they are, they will be championing, things like you hear Jesus say, supposedly anyway, in the New Testament. Forgive so that you'll be forgiven, In other words, veering away from punishing attitudes. Bless those that curse you. Do good to those who despitefully use you. Sort of things like that. So, and punishment, why is punishment such a bad thing? Because it's demanding that people change without due process. It's kind of like in the law, it's like, passing sentence without due process. So, what you need to do is, and you can have laws and you can have disincentives, but you shouldn't have a punishing attitude or intent. And all we rule out is cruel and unusual punishment. I don't think it should be seen as punishment. You protect society, put people in a situation where they can if they're harmful to society and you need to do that. But you're trying to help them recover. So, that libertard. Yeah, well, that's not retarded. That's intelligent. If anyone's saying that, we're to study, the brain and the mind a little more, and be honest more with themselves, they would not be so eager to want to beat people over the head as a way to fix the society's problems. I'm not saying you can't keep someone apart from society if they're in danger to society. You don't have to. It'd be a reasonable thing to do. But once they're in there, you try to help them and heal them. And you don't have some arbitrary amount of time that, you paid and now you can go. Well, what if they're still sick? You said, well, you're conflating sickness and criminality. It's pretty much the same thing. It's mental health. And, Jesus, when he was sitting amongst the people who were seen by his culture as the greatest of sinners, said, is why you sitting with these folk? And supposedly, this wonderful character says, hey, the healthy don't need a physician. It's the sick. So, this is kind of a backhanded way of complimenting the insulter, which is very emotionally intelligent, not entirely accurate. You hear about the mystic experiencing a dissolution of the concept of being a subject looking at objects in the world. The kind of subject-object split. And overcoming that. Well, yeah, that happens, but, it doesn't necessarily make you this much better person. You were born that way. As an infant, that's how you were. You didn't have a self-concept. So losing a self-concept doesn't necessarily make you virtuous. Again, look at studies of the mind and the brain and the maturation process of human beings. Yeah. You'll see that empathy is something that needs to be learned. It is culturally implanted. And you can do that without the barb, without the notion that some people just need to be punished because you're angry and you need to hit something. No, that's not empathetic. That's not the way it is. You might have feelings like that from time to time. And what is a mystic? A mystic is a person on that path. Since, nothing's absolute, where are you going to draw the line? So if you're spiritual but not religious, you're basically a mystic. And, there I hear talk about the dark night of the soul, and all of these stages of mystic experience. Come on. People are pretty individual. Well, this is pretty, that's not the right word. But I'm not a genius, and my vocabulary is not great, but perhaps you get what I'm saying. They're individuals are individuals, and they are different, and their experiences are going to be different. And if you get beyond just describing what the path is and the process is, you try to tell people there are these stages. You take a really bright child, you put him in kindergarten, pretty soon you realize, this is a genius child. They're already along with the teacher, just absorbing it, pretty soon they're, at the age of 12, they could be a physicist perhaps, it's like, so they would skip some grades, wouldn't they? So, it's a lot more flexible than that. Dark night of the soul. Well, you will encounter some things that in your healing of trauma, you're going to find things that you heal from. But that's not all at once, bang, boom, like a stage, like, I have just reached the stage of total healing, yeah, right. It's a process, it takes time. And there's not one single night where you're going to go, oh wow, I've done it all. Oh, look at me, I've arrived. And you hear that, of course. You hear that a lot in religions. It's like that, But let's not conflate mysticism into neo-insanity. The more healed you are, the more rational and creative and compassionate you can be. And there are limits on those things because you're a human being. You can't take on your shoulders the whole world. But in politics, things like that, you consider the world and you consider what's best for it. And so there's that. But you do it basically by promoting processes that tend to solve our world's problems. You support democracy. You support what supports it. And you support business or trade. And you support those things that augment and help that trade to be efficient and helping the most people. And and that we're going to talk about socialism and capitalism. Well, some things need to be paid by taxes. And some things, that are common use, everybody benefits, and, it's a line you have to determine, and other things need to be paid by the individual, perhaps. Yes. And I think you're going to see that around the world. That's how it ends up. So is it, if you're you can be too socialist and be too capitalist, in my opinion. Everything that works around the world is blended those two things. Wonder why. Look at yourself. Look at who you are. And all the perspectives that make that. Are you one single individual? I would say no. You have one single self-concept. And you could say, if you started defining that a lot, then it would get fuzzy around the edges, wouldn't it? But, But that is taking a lot of perspectives and putting them together, and in various circumstances, in order to say, I had this experience, and I had that experience. If that cohesiveness were to be destroyed, you'd be mentally ill. So you need that. But you need also to realize that in many ways you're different people at different times. And you can change. The beauty of it is you can change. You can make a new integration. You can be more empathetic in all of the wonderful ways I mentioned. Again, I defined the mystic as someone that's on a path toward greater mental health and virtue. And I would have to say that virtue comes clearly in the forms of empathies that I've mentioned. Trust or faith could be included as a virtue. Art is definitely a virtue, the ability to see the good in things no matter what. That comes from the creative perspective in you. And truth comes from your objective perspective. Goodness from your compassionate perspective. And all these things interact. And a lot of people will try to pull apart this package that I'm presenting and say, well, everybody does this, so what? Not everybody does this. People don't put it all together. It's the integration that's important. Integration. Maybe for a later discussion. If you want to learn things more in depth, I would say go to TED Talks and TEDx Talks sometimes, and to the Mayo Clinic, what I got to say. Yeah, there's a lot of YouTube channels that are very helpful. And I try to mention at least one or two in the description of the videos that I put out. So, yeah, I'll do that again with this one. I'm going to close this. I'm not a great speaker. It's not a well-integrated speech, is it? Not enough storytelling to hold your interest. And I apologize for that. Maybe I'll get better. Maybe somebody will come along and they'll do a lot better than me with the same information. I hope so, because I'm 70. Yeah. Not the time to plan far ahead. Yeah. All of this fireworks will one day become more impaired than die. Poof. Yeah. Might be one of the benefits of the mystics or revelations if they're well informed. Anyway, that's that. And as I like to say, all that is wondrous and beautiful that unites all of us together. That in me, would like to honor that in you, to recognize that in you, to see that we're all mirrors of one another in reality, and we need to try to work together. So that which is wondrous and beautiful in me honors the same in you. That word is namaste. Namaste. Later, y'all.